as well as the Alliance of National Democratic Filipino Organizations. Yeah, there's also the Anduril Out of SoCal coalition of organizations that are a part of these alliances and also not a part of these alliances as well, which are taking up the united fight in SoCal for Anduril, this AI weapons corporation out of the Philippines and out of everywhere, out of our communities and out of SoCal. So yes, I'll do a quick just orientation to the room. This is a conference room. We're at UCI. This room has been reserved graciously by a professor here, who is an ally of our organization. So please, if you have any trash, please clean up after yourself. And we'll be cleaning up this room after we're done. So let's leave it as we found it. As well as there are bathrooms, you can exit either this way through this and take a left and go around, and it should be in the back of the building, or you can use this exit and there should be a sign directing you to the restrooms. Yeah, I believe that's, sorry, you can like hear me. But yeah, this is everything, I think. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Please feel free to ask anything. And yeah, we can move into our political situation, and I will pass it to our facilitators.
Um, yes, we'll be taking you guys through a quick political situation of like, I guess the global situation, but then also the situation in the Philippines. But yes. But yeah, I kind of wanted to stop and like ask everyone, just to take a look over a couple of these headlines and like maybe take a couple seconds to like note like what do you see, what are things that you've already seen, like what are these things like things that we've been like seeing in the news cycle. But yeah, I'll give people a couple seconds. But yeah, I think probably a lot of us have already kind of seen a lot of the what connects a lot of these things, and it's like an increase in worldwide militarism, right? Um, we see that like there's been an increase in the US, or there's calls to increase the US military budget. There's wars in Iran or wars in Palestine and Lebanon. We also see in the far right, like a news article about the Balikatan war exercises. And then I think in the bottom left, right, we also see maybe talks about RIMPAC with the US military activity in Hawaii. But yeah, like there's other stuff that I haven't even mentioned in here. Like there's the recent attacks on Venezuela and like the increasing militarism in places like Japan and Germany. And we really see that all over the world, the US is actually increasing its militarism. And, like what could be the reason for this? I think a lot of us probably have like an intuitive understanding that like over the last couple of decades, the United States has really been like the preeminent world power. And because of that, it's used its like large military and economic dominance to extract labor resource and other like physical resources from a lot of the countries around the world. But now that China is really growing in like global predominance and has more power, I'm really seeing like out of desperation to like maintain the profits that it has by exploiting colonies and like or semi-colonies in countries around the world. The United States is really ramping up its like military attacks and military like posturing. Like as we see in places like Venezuela, Cuba, or Iran, places that are like kind of like unfriendly terms with China, you really see a lot of like military posturing against them. Um, but in all of this and all this rising like imperialism and rising militarism by the desperate US empire, we really see the people who are most impacted are just the normal people who actually live in these countries, right? Like in West Asia, we really see like an active genocide being carried out by Israel, but we also see like the destruction of infrastructure, like the displacement of people and even the killings of people in Iran in places like the Philippines and Hawaii, where there's active war games between the United States and like a lot of its military partnerships, really see like displacement of like fisher folk, displacement of people from like their land, from their ways of life. We also see displacement of a lot of indigenous folks, especially in Hawaii and the Philippines. And we also see a lot of like destruction of the environment as like the US military and its allied militaries like have war games and like literally bomb the surrounding area. But yeah, but even here in the Imperial Core, like places like in the US, we really see that like these things are not like positive things for the people. Like an increase in the military budget would ultimately come at the pockets of like, the US people who are already seeing like rising prices. And especially because of like wars like Iran, where we see like rising gas prices. But yeah, we really see that like all around the world, there's a lot of like increasing militarism due to like this inter-imperialist conflict. But yes, I'll turn it over to the next person.
Hi everybody, my name is Anvita. I'm from Resist US Led War at UCI. Like Ethan was saying, in service of, US imperialist interests, we're seeing exploitation of labor, land, US militarism escalating, even like in the Philippines, especially in the Philippines. We're seeing this being carried out in many ways right now. Recently, I don't know if people saw this, but Marco Rubio, the US secretary, went to the Philippines, right? And what did he do over there? He struck like military agreements and agreements for economic projects, right? That are being facilitated by the puppet president, Marcos Jr. in the Philippines. And one of these projects is Pax Silica. Have people heard of Pax Silica? Okay, yeah. What's like one word that comes to your mind when you hear Pax Silica?
Exploitation.
Exploitation,
Data center.
data center.
Extraction.
Extraction. Yeah, so Pax Silica is an economic project basically for the US to have a hub in the Philippines for its AI supply chain. And so with AI now really dominating many industries and sectors, right? All of that is going to profit US billionaires, US imperialists, but with projects like Pax Silica, that means more and more exploitation of land and labor of the Philippines as well. And really selling the Philippines out are these politicians like Marcos Jr. Collaborating with US imperialists. And so while the conditions in the Philippines are worsening because of the heightening US militarism and selling out of the Philippines, the people are trying to fight back, right? The Filipino people are fighting back against these conditions, but the Philippine state, backed by the US, is really cracking down on the people and attacking the people through different military programs, counterinsurgency programs like NTF-LCAC. And even here in the US, we're seeing the rising attacks on migrants, Trump escalating ICE raids, and while Filipino migrants are being attacked over here, what is the US Philippine ambassador, Jose Romualdez, doing? Is he doing anything about it? No, he's not. Instead, he's going to New York to participate in a counter-terrorist summit, where basically he contributes to this discussion that's talking more about, okay, how are we going to attack the people more? How are we going to double down on attacking Filipinos, right? Um, and with the escalating US militarism and with people making more and more profit off of AI and its domination in different industries. One of that is also the war industry. And now AI is really being this, new front to war. And we're seeing the growth of AI weapons companies. We're seeing the growth of weapons manufacturers like Anduril. And we will be talking about this more and the effects that it's having on the people throughout this ED. But now I'm going to pass it to Ethan, to talk about, amidst this, how are people fighting back even harder?
Yeah, I mean, even though we see a lot of this like fascist repression, we have to ask ourselves why is the US and why is the Philippines so desperate to attack the Filipino people and attack people just fighting back? And it's because people are fighting back in a lot of big ways. People will not take, the exploitation and the destruction of the environment just like sitting down. People are going to get up and like, commit to like real tangible action to like make changes in the system. But yeah, we really see all around the world, there's actually people coming together to like fight these inter-imperialist conflicts. Like in Venezuela, people are fighting back against the US's basically unilateral regime change. In Iran or even in the diaspora, people are fighting back against the current war that's going on. Or even in places like Hawaii, there have been decades and decades of action against RIMPAC. Um, but yeah, we really see like all around the world, people are fighting back. One like example of these places is in the Philippines. Very soon, there's going to be a State of the Nation where Marcos will basically lie about everything that's been going on in the Philippines. He'll lie about like the economic growth of a nation that's still agrarian. He'll lie about rooting up corruption, where he himself and his cronies have been stealing from the Filipino people. And he will lie about the effectiveness of the NCF-LCAC in ending like quote unquote local communist armed insurgencies, when in reality the people are still fighting back and the movement has never basically been stronger. And soon people will hold a people sona or a peace sona where thousands will take to the streets to really counteract this black propaganda. And it's not only going to be in the Philippines, it's also going to be here. In a couple of days, just on Monday, we're actually going to have our own People's State of the Nation, where we'll also be addressing a lot of the like false claims of the presidency. But then also we want to like bolster the strength of the movement by coming together and like making like, a very clear showing that we're not like for this president and that the people will continue to fight. Um, but yeah, we also like very recently protested against RIMPAC, just here in San Diego, where like I think upwards of 500 or so people really came together to like at San Diego, which is like a very well-known port of like of operations for like the U.S. military. But yeah, and then we can also see that we're fighting against Anduril too. It's kind of hard to see in that photo, but this sign is like a UCI cut ties with Anduril. We're here at the UCI campus. A lot of the organizations here have actually been fighting back against Anduril, which is this like AI like centered weapons manufacturer. And we really see that like in ties with like the fact that the United States is trying to procure like AI like silicon and AI and things necessary to like create AI. We also see that this AI is used by like manufacturers by like Anduril to basically create weapons to fight against the people. And we also like a lot of us also know about GKN, which happened recently, where like this weapons manufacturer in the nearby area caused an evacuation of 50,000 people. The weapons manufacturers like Anduril also have ties to these corporations. They actually have a partnership right now to create like uncrewed aerial vehicles, or which they want to basically continue to use to fight the people. But just overall, we really see that even though that there's this increasing wave of militarism, people can fight back, and I'm sure that's the reason why a lot of us are here. But yeah, I think we can then turn this over to the next speaker.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mango, and I'm part of Amato FFPS.
I'm Koji. I'm part of Unifying Long Beach.
Yes, thank you for the speakers to take over like the political situation. We're also gonna talk about the significance of Anduril in the whole scheme, right? But we are also gonna go through the effects in the Philippines and across the globe. But also we wanted to talk about the significance of Anduril in SoCal, but ultimately how are people fighting back? Throughout the program, we'll end with a breakout session because we're also all part of the Anduril Out coalition. So we also want to, talk about people's resistance, understand the situation, but more importantly, what are concrete steps that we can do to fight back? So, yes. I know, right? I don't know who said but I agree. So just to quickly reintroduce Anduril, it's like Ethan said, it's a transnational AI and autonomous weapons company that's actually based in Southern California. So like previously stated before, with the U.S.'s escalating wars of aggression, we see that there's a big transition to not just put troops on the ground, but really advance into AI autonomous warfare, drone warfare to conduct on the people. And its founder is Palmer Luckey, who is a self-proclaimed radical Zionist. And he was also an ex-Palantir executive. So we see that with the founder, it's a continuation of these defense corporation companies creating more money to start like corporations like Anduril. And him proclaiming himself as a radical Zionist is very explicit and very important to see how, like recently, the U.S. and the Israeli militaries agreed to integrate their armies. Just I think about 2 days ago. But with Anduril backing up the U.S., they also have various contracts within the U.S. government, such as the Department of Defense, Air Force, the Marine corporations. So really seeing that they are really dedicated to back up every sector of the U.S. Government and military to wage these wars of aggression. A little bit on Anduril, they hold a monopoly on the surveillance tower technology for the US-Mexico border because through the One Big Ugly Bill Act by Trump, he stated that all surveillance towers need to be autonomous. And with Anduril being an AI and autonomous company, they don't need people to man these like weapons. They really siphoning the data to really surveil the people. And we've seen with the attacks on migrants across the US, right, how ultimately these surveillance towers are used to kidnap and detain migrants all in the guise of profit. They also have a $20 billion contract with the US military for the Lattice AI targeting system, which we can talk more about here. So has anyone heard of the Lattice AI system before? Well, similarly to surveillance towers, Anduril doesn't only support the surveillance towers to surveil migrants locally, but we can see through Lattice AI that it acts as the digital brain. So connecting sensory towers, all forms of surveillance, and allowing third parties to use their data to ultimately create an advanced grid to track, the entire globe, honestly, in order to use this data, in order to track what the US and their allies deem as threats, right? So we see that with surveillance, it's ultimately used for the US's counterinsurgency tactics globally to facilitate the destruction and war against the global South. And more on Anduril, they've also create weapons which have been used to train militaries in military exercises. So it was brought up recently about RIMPAC. We've seen that Anduril, their Ghost Shark machine, has been used in RIMPAC 2024, which is the largest international like naval war games in the world. But additionally, they have the Roadrunner drone killer, which was used on the war against Iran. So we see that with Anduril, they make contracts with not just the US, but with other countries across the Asia Pacific as the tensions between the US and China rise. And I can pass it on to the next speaker.
Yeah. So now that we've learned a little bit about like what Anduril is and like the technologies that develop, we'll go into talking about like why is Anduril in the Philippines? So what role do they play in the Philippines in the US being there, right? So I think before we go into Anduril specifically, it'd be really important to identify the conditions that the Philippines is undergoing, right? So who here has heard of the three basic problems? Can we shout them out really quickly?
It's up there.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yes, exactly. All right. So just to go through them really quickly, right? US imperialism, it's like the collaboration between the US and Philippines government for the benefit of the US and the Philippine bureaucrat capitalist class. What does this look like? This looks like unequal military agreements and strengthening counterinsurgency. We can see that with like the recent meeting with Marco Rubio going there to the Philippines. And also maintain military presence. We see that with like the enhanced defense cooperation agreement that has that allows for U.S. military bases in the Philippines that let the U.S. and their allies conduct military exercises such as Balikatan and Salaknib. Sorry. It also allows for the U.S. to maintain economic, political, and military control over the Philippines, which is advantageous in their war with their rival imperialist China. Where the Philippines is located is just like generally is close to China, close to their rival China. It's very beneficial in taking control over the supply chains. Yes. And then to move on to feudalism, this is maintaining backwards farming practices, landlessness, and unfair working conditions of farmers and farm workers. What does this look like? This looks like frequent land grabbing, mass export or an example of this would be like mass export of rice and little to no compensation for the farmers. A lot of it is exported, and then actually a majority of the rice in the Philippines is imported. So yeah, essentially these farmers are exploited for their harvest, but to be sent for export rather than going to the Filipino people themselves. And then bureaucrat capitalism is Philippine officials using the government as a business. For an example being taking money from public projects such as the Ghost Flood projects, essentially just extracting profits from things meant to serve the people. So where does Anduril fit into all of this, right? In terms of imperialism, it provides AI weapons and technology to strengthen their army, to allow them to maintain control over the Philippines. Anduril also benefits from the feudal exploitation of the Philippines. Land grabbing, it provides the space and resources to freely extract manufacturing of their AI technologies, like semiconductors. And the exploited farm workers actually, provide a pool of potential workers for the manufacturing. They also benefit from bureaucrat capitalism. The Filipino politicians enact the legislation that lets Anduril and other weapons manufacturers freely use the Philippines for profit. So yeah, it's pretty clear. Anduril benefits from the three basic problems that disenfranchise the Filipino people, but they benefit from upholding it as well. And we will go into the specifics of that right now. So yeah, in terms of the U.S. Dominating the Philippines and using it as a advantageous geopolitical position against China, the military exercises conducted in the Philippine countryside, they what is this? They allow them to maintain control over the land, but also really strengthen the militaries and also like flex their power against their imperialist rival, right? So we can see Anduril playing a role in this in providing the Ghost X drone that is used in Seleknib 2025, as well as the Lattice AI systems that were mentioned earlier, which were actually used in missile targeting systems in Balikatan 2026. These missile targeting exercises specifically being used on like amphibious targets as practice against like potential Chinese ships. This threatens the lives of Filipinos in the countryside, displacing coastal communities, preventing fisher folk from eating. It brews paranoia of war, the constant sound of missiles and gunfire, right? That really scares the people in the countryside. And most of all, it puts the target on the back of all Filipinos in the event of a war between US and China. Another way that we see this is through Valor Atomics. This isn't explicitly a military like initiative, but essentially it's a startup by Anduril and Palantir, and they plan to build a nuclear research facility at UP Diliman. This is only made possible by another unequal agreement between the US and the Philippines, USPH 123, which formally allows for streamlined US nuclear investment under the guise of quote unquote clean energy development. There's no guarantee that this facility will provide jobs for Filipinos or the students there at UPD. It actually endangers the students, right, to develop and test unknown, potentially dangerous technology used to advance US imperialist interests, likely through strengthening military presence, developing new technologies in some way. So yeah, all in all, like Anduril, through providing the technology and funding, helps maintain U.S. dominance in their inter-imperialist war with China under the guise and defense of under the guise of defense and development in the Philippines. But it's done at the cost of the people ultimately. But yeah, I'll pass it on to Mango to talk about the other three basic problems.
The other two. Yeah, thank you, Koji, for taking us through just the role of U.S. imperialism in the Philippines. It was mentioned earlier, but we see with the semi-feudal character of the Philippines that Pax Silica is going to be really enforced in the Philippines. So with Pax Silica, again, it's an economic initiative it's an economic initiative by the U.S. in order to secure the whole critical supply chain in its competition against China. But we really see this done with Pax Silica being enforced in the Philippines through EDCA, which is a military agreement for military bases to be in the Philippines, right? But also with Pax Silica, it will be built on the Luzon economic corridor, and it's designated as a special economic zone. And what this means is that this zone will function off of U.S. laws and jurisdiction and have deregulated laws. So we really see that there is no Philippine sovereignty for this initiative to be made, but it's off of the permission off of the puppet president, right? But more in special economic zones, with deregulation, we see that with special economic zones, they are at the expense of the peasants and the farmers in the Philippines, where they will be facing land grabbing. But not only that, it allows the exploitation of the workers that work in the Luzon economic zone, because in these sites, people are not able to unionize or strike. It's not legal. And we really see the sovereignty being taken, and what happens when these people rise and assert their right to farm what they want, to use the land as they please. They face retaliation from the U.S.-backed Philippine government. So we really see with the role of Pax Silica exploiting the Philippine land, Anduril cannot function without these critical mineral extraction from Pax Silica, as AI would need land and water and basic resources for it to function. We see that the selling of the land is for the guys for AI to advance, but not the Filipino people. And with Pax Silica, it was actually spearheaded by Jacob Hellberg, which is the U.S. Secretary of State for Economic Affairs. So his role is to shape economic and AI policy, but what we found is that he was also the former senior advisor to Palantir. And during his election for his role, he explicitly stated that he plans to retain the investments in companies such as Anduril and SpaceX, which I know is also in Long Beach, OpenAI. So we see that with Anduril and Pax Silica, that the facilitators for these initiatives work closely together, right? They profit off of each other, and they really collaborate and really benefit from the exploitation of farmers. So it's not only the U.S. that is collaborating, but back with what Koji said about bureaucrat capitalist, we see that it's really Marcos Jr. also that gave up 19 hectares of land for free for Pax Silica to be initiated. And we've seen how he's strengthened the relations with Trump and Marco Rubio for the U.S. and Philippine alliance to only strengthen. But we've seen what this means at the cost of the people, right? And it's not just the puppet president, Marcos Jr., but also wanted to mention Joshua Binkan, which is the president for the Basis Conversion and Development Authority in the Philippines. And a couple of days ago, he approved to expand Pax Silica to build an energy infrastructure in Tarlac. But we've seen that the expansion of Pax Silica is at the cost of people that live in the Luzon Economic Corridor. We wanted to bring back to the fact that also a couple of months ago in the Philippines, in Luzon at May 2026, that people that live on the now Luzon Economic Corridor have faced energy blackouts, brownouts, because of
the prioritization for these energy infrastructure to be used for AI and for foreign interests, but not to actually supply like the Philippine people. And when he was questioned about the concerns for water consumption and environmental concerns, he dismissed it and instead just emphasized that the Philippines, like we have more space for high value manufacturing jobs, right? But what happens when the Filipino people work in these packed silica sites, the Luzon Economic Corridor? They're not able to unionize, they're not able to strike, they're not able to assert their rights living and working on the land. So we see that ultimately that this guise to develop AI is to only advance US interests at the cost of the people. And yes, wanted to include one more time that it's not only just going to lead to energy crisis, but climate crisis. And it was mentioned before, but we've seen with the ghost flood control projects and other mutual aid efforts for the Philippine people, they've only been pocketed by these bureaucrat capitalists. So really just showing that the development of AI is facilitated through leaders that are not for the people, but for their own pockets and their own interests. So. And yeah, thank you. For our next session, we'll be hearing some sharings about someone who was able to actually go to the Philippines and see these conditions for themselves.
Yes. Hi all, I'm Jazz. I'm part of Filipino Solidarity Organization, as well as the International Coalition for Human Rights in the Philippines. And really wanted to include this in our presentation note because we read this in the news, we see it on our social media feeds, but the best way to really understand the impacts and the conditions of those who are experiencing the brunt of these US militarization expansion projects is to actually go amongst the people, to go to the Philippines, to talk to these communities and actually understand what is the impact, what is the impact of packed silica, what is the impact of Anduril conducting these war games in the backyards of everyday people, particularly for peasants and fisher folk and worker communities. And so I was able to go to the Philippines last year on a peace mission with iChirp and Bayan, and was able to actually talk to community members that are affected by developments like this. What you see here on the left side of the screen is actually a solar panel farm that is built in Zambales near Subic Bay. And this, or where Subic Bay, which is home to one of the biggest US military bases is. And so this solar farm is actually built on top of the mountains and is owned by Aboitiz Aboitiz Solar Energy. And like what folks were sharing about packed silica, New Clark City, which is on the right here, is blatant for taking away the sovereign land of indigenous communities, especially the Aita community, who live in Zambales, who live in the central Luzon area. And so you can see in these pictures actually. So the picture on the top most left side is Zambales Zambales Mountains from the fisherfolk community that I was able to talk to, where actually because of the presence of these US corporations, which is what's going to happen to folks that are being affected by packed silica and other US-led developments. The fisher folk are not able to fish next to these corporations. If they get too close, they will be militarized. The security guards will shoot water cannons at them. And not only that, not only are these corporations present in these areas, but also the US military is continuing to expand its bases. And so a finance corporation named Cerberus, actually owns land here in Subic Bay and is leasing it to the US military. However, the same things are happening. When fisher folks get too close to the area, they are surveilled, they are harassed, and they're unable to make a livelihood because they have to go out to sea to fish. And because, folks were sharing earlier during the political situation that the presence of the US in the Philippines is also intensifying the tension between the US and China. And so not only are these fisherfolk prone to surveillance and militarization from the US military, these US-based corporations, but they are also facing harassment from the Chinese Coast Guard, who are also encroaching in the West Philippine Sea. And so those are just some of the impacts of the fisherfolk and also the Aita community who live amongst the Zambales Mountains and who are not actually conferred with in the building of these renewable energy sites, right? I'm sure Marcos and these corporations really uplift them as something that is good for the community, good for society, but in reality, it's coming at the cost of indigenous communities who are being displaced, who are, really losing, right, their ancestral lands, the environmental integrity of the land, and we're really seeing that. What they're also experiencing are higher temperatures, shrinking rivers, dried up springs, and also like drier agricultural lands, which is the livelihood of many indigenous communities who also are peasants in the Philippines. And so the kuya here is who lives and who is an Aita community member who is actually sharing with us that the community members that live in these areas that are being developed are being they're being tricked. They're being tricked by landlords and government officials who are trying to get them to sell their land unknowingly. Many of them don't have access to education, so documents are served to them in English or served to them in Tagalog when they have their own languages that they speak. And so instead they are tricked into giving away their land, or they are tricked into going to receive aid from the government. And actually what he shared is that when they're receiving aid from this government, they're asked to sign in, give their information to them. But in reality, what that sign-in sheet actually leads to is them signing away their land. And so the government will not hold themselves accountable because the communities not understand that, and because that is information that is withheld from the communities. And instead they are displaced. They have to find new lands to farm, and they have to find a way to be transported hours and hours to be able to even sell their harvests. And so what you also see going more to the right is also some of the environmental impact. Folks talked about the ghost flood control projects and really how the Philippine government and even the US, who sends aid to the Philippines in times of natural disasters, which actually the community members were sharing is its own ghost project of US aid being sent to the Philippines and not actually being distributed to the Filipino community members. And so they are left with these destroyed homes, destroyed infrastructure, where the Philippine government, all the way from President Marcos and his cronies to even the local governments, will find any way, like folks were sharing earlier, these bureaucrat capitalists will find any way to corrupt the funds and keep them for themselves. And meanwhile, these are the living conditions of Filipino fisherfolk, of peasants, of indigenous communities. And so all the way on the right is actually a US military ship, which is docked into Big Bay, which is supposedly no longer a functioning US military site. But what the US military does is actually find loopholes, to use Philippine military bases for its own needs to maintain control over the Philippines. And so this is really, while this is not exactly where Pax Silica is, where Anduril is being tested, these are the impacts of corporations like Anduril and Pax Silica, where we actually hear from farmers whose where the Balikatan exercises are happening in their backyards, where they can't till their land, they don't have access to their livelihood. And so their conditions continue to get worse at the expense of the greed and the interest of U.S. imperialism and its puppets, the Philippine government. However, what we really want to share and uplift is that despite these conditions that Philippine community members are living in the countryside, on the coast, that they are still organizing, no? They're being prone to surveillance, they're prone to militarization. However, what I have been able to witness, this is on both International Human Rights Day as well as Andres Bonifacio Day, or November 30th, where thousands of people are actually coming to the streets, confronting the police and the military, and really bringing their fights together. There are jeepney drivers, there's workers, there's peasants who are, and met so many youth and students as well, who are really coming together because of the organizing that they're doing, not just in the cities, but actually similar to us, going to the countryside to organize the peasants, right? That's what happened to the Negros 19, where the journalists, the student activists were leaving their comforts in the cities, in Quezon City, going to the countryside to integrate with the peasants, learn about their struggles, learn about what they're doing to fight back. And this is what the Philippine government is afraid of. That's why they are massacring activists and peasants. They are targeting and imprisoning these same people who are fighting for a basic livelihood, fighting for a truly democratic society. And so that is really why, we actually encourage folks to go to the Philippines and to see it for ourselves, because that is also, we understand things cerebrally or like surface level, but this is real. These are the everyday impacts of not just Filipinos, but of the global South. And also, this is the fight that they are waging. That is not just a fight for Filipinos, but really a fight for everyone who is under this exploitative system. And so, we're learning about all of these things that are happening to our communities and that are bad for them, but also want to instill that there's hope, and that we all have a role to play in this fight. So wanting to, I'll end with that and actually pass it to folks who will share more on the significance of us and our role in this fight here in SoCal.
Okay, yes. Okay, so we're gonna do some chants if people want to get up and stretch. Also, I know folks have been sitting in this room for some time. I don't want to chant to the mic. Okay. No boots on the ground, no bombs in the air.
US out everywhere.
No boots on the ground, no bombs in the air.
US out everywhere.
Okay, when I say Anduril out now, you're gonna say Anduril out now. Just repeat after me. Anduril out now.
Anduril out now.
Anduril out of SoCal.
Anduril out of SoCal.
All right. Okay. No boots on the ground, no bombs in the air.
US out of everywhere.
Anduril out of SoCal.
Anduril out of SoCal.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So we're about to get into the significance of this weapons corporation. We see it waging war and militarism across the world. It's in the Philippines. But now we come back to our local area, right? Our local area in SoCal and also in the United States, and see really how does this weapons manufacturing cycle play a role here? How are the different parts of it embedded into our communities? And so to really see how we can fight back against them locally and what role that really has to play. And also fighting for other countries and the liberation of other countries from US imperialism. So, all right.
Hi, whoa, it's low. Hi, I'm Siren from Anak Bayan Long Beach. Yeah, and just like how folks earlier were saying, like this violence does happen in our homelands, but it also we feel the effects of war in our communities and even in our backyards. A lot of it is where it gets started, and we see it in this cycle. We go through the different regions of how Southern California plays such a major role into continuing this cycle of a U.S. imperialist agenda. So we start, well, yes, we start at the top where we learned about Pax Silica and all the materials that are plundered from our homelands. And we recently launched, UCLA has recently launched a semiconductor hub where they get to use all these materials plundered from Pax Silica from the Philippines. And it goes to UCLA where the engineering department, who's led by Northrop Grumman, another war manufacturing company, is leading this hub in order to use the UCLA resources and students to continue developing these semiconductors. And then we go an hour to Orange County, an hour away to Orange County, right? Where the headquarters of Anduril is located at, where a lot of the research, the development of this software and hardware is being developed in these laboratories. And it becomes this hub and it becomes this main center point to where not only are these things being developed, but they're also using UCI as a way to funnel students and workers into these industries and into these careers. They encourage all the STEM students here to funnel them into producing and doing this research and doing all of the dirty work of continuing to develop these weapons. Another local impact that we see also is in GKN. Who's heard of GKN? Boo! GKN has been a collaborator with Anduril, and they recently had that chemical spill affecting the environment as well as displacing so many residents of working class families. Yes. And next we go to Long Beach, where recently Anduril has announced a manufacturing factory to build that will cost $1.5 billion. And to get all of that research that's happening within Orange County and to manufacture those weapons in Long Beach itself. And it's even being endorsed by the mayor to funnel Cal State Long Beach students, Long Beach City College students into working for this company. And also with that, displacing even more residents and, my goodness, sorry. Also just adding to the already expanding space beach. What that means is that Long Beach is already known to be collaborating with so many war manufacturing companies, and this would be just another collaborator within that entire condition. And because all of this, right, we get UCLA, we get UCI, we get CSULB. Not only are these educational institutions like collaborating in order to advance all of this, it's for what? To put all of this money and research into war instead of giving it to housing needs, to the houseless, to students' basic needs, to our education, to funneling into, instead of funneling all of this into like student needs and to the people, it's going into war and to violence into our own backyards. And then I will pass it to Annika to continue how this cycle.
Okay, yeah. So we see the cycle from the research and the researching in the labs, right, in Orange County, all the way to manufacturing, the actual workers that in the community, in the Long Beach community, that are being funneled to build weapons. So now we move to we have these weapons. These weapons are being manufactured, right? What are the areas where they're being tested? So actually, in the San Fernando Valley, just recently, a few days ago, there was the first autonomous air missile strike was being tested in the San Fernando Valley at the Edwards Air Force Base, I believe. So that is a picture of the autonomous plane that actually did live strikes right up by the San Fernando Valley. And so these weapons are not just being, tested in Hawaii and RIMPAC, but they're also being tested at military bases that exist here in SoCal. So these weapons are being tested here, and now where else are they being tested? Where else are they being used on the people? And so we talked about the Rim of the Pacific, the largest maritime military exercises that just finished or going to finish up in Hawaii. And folks have talked about the Ghost Shark drone as well, which was being used in the RIMPAC exercises. And so San Diego being a giant port, a huge port, is now taking these weapons that are being built here, that are being tested here, and now they're using them to test them also in other countries, as well as to have them leave the ports to be deployed. And so we even go into back, through this Ghost Shark drone being tested in RIMPAC, all the way back to the continued militarism, right? Now these weapons are being used. They're used with the intentions of suppressing people, to surveil people in the countryside of the Philippines, to be tested in the Philippines, which folks have mentioned, the surveillance drones tested in the Balikatan exercises, joint military exercises between the US and the Philippines, that are being used to further increase the military capacity of the armed forces of the Philippines, to continue suppressing the people, which already enforces US domination over the Philippines, the US control of the Philippine military. And so we see this this cycle, right? The cycle has to finish. And so the way that it finishes is this continued militarism comes right back into the plunder of the land of the Filipino people, right? It is this militarism and increased US inaction of this that is what encourages the Philippines to continue to suppress people who are fighting back against the plunder of their resources, from the Pax Silica initiative to, as we'll talk about later, other mining projects that are being conducted in the Philippines. And so these are the actual materials that are being used to make these weapons, but they're also being sourced from the same places that are being militarized because of them. And so this cycle really continues, and it goes all the way up until what roles do each of our areas play in our communities. And so we can really learn now from this to see where are they being enacted, to see how we can really take up the fight against them, and how we can understand our role, even particularly to how do we fulfill our role in breaking this cycle and continuing to fight back against it. So our organizations have been continuing to resist, and so have the people in the Philippines. So we'll actually get into a brief part of, we're talking now going into how we're going to resist this from the Philippines all the way up until here in our areas. And so folks talked about the National Democratic Movement and what it's really striving to fight back against: the US domination, US imperialism, feudalism, and bureaucrat capitalism in the Philippines. And so we see that the resistance in the Philippines takes up many forms and is interconnected with the struggle here as we continue to fight in solidarity alongside them. And so we have multiple examples. The protests for Pax Silica have been enormous, right? And people are not just raising the call to end this Pax Silica project, the plunder of their land, but they're actually seeing, if you can see in the photos, they're raising the call for US out of the Philippines, US out of our country, and end to US bases, because they see this for what it really is, and they're raising the call higher to not just demand an end to this project, but an end to the entire US imperialist domination of the Philippines. Additionally, there are other projects, other mining projects, which are being conducted again on indigenous land, on where peasants are and farmers are. And so recently we saw actually a win in April, I believe, a win for the people against a British mining corporation plundering the land of the people for gold and for minerals and for copper. And you see the people actually fighting back, and not just protesting, but actually directly blocking access to it. And they actually won to where the corporation could not be established in their area. We also see people taking up the fight against the militarization of the countryside, of US weapons out of the countryside, in the Defend Negros campaign as well. And so people have talked about the Negros 19. And so actually it goes beyond the struggle, the political struggle of waging protests and uniting people of all different sectors, but there is actually an ongoing civil war in the Philippines as well, a revolution that is being waged. People are not just protesting out in the streets, but they're actually taking up arms, peasants and workers taking up arms in the countryside to really fight back against US domination and to realize the revolution in the Philippines, the continued revolution to actually kick out the US of their land as well. So we raise up the struggles of the people here, as well as we continue on the struggle here in the US, how we can fight back in solidarity. So I'll pass it to Sirenik.
Yeah, like these fights are taking up nationally as we are in the US imperialist power, as we are in the belly of the beast, right? We see that currently our target is Anduril, but also within the many war manufacturing companies with the amount of educational institution divest, like CSU will be divest as well. But recently we have Anduril Out of Washington, who recently launched their campaign, finding that Anduril was planning to build, I believe, warships within their state. We have Anduril Out of Ohio, who currently Anduril is trying to build another plant to develop their AI drones and to also impact their environment even more so. And here we even have Anduril Out of SoCal. Whoa, because are we going to let our region continue this cycle of violence and war? No. So, and all of these fights, even though we're all in different regions, this is all a fight we come together to take up. Because the more that people come together to fight this bigger power, the more that we're able to win. And then now we go into how are we going to do that? Yes.
Cool, thank you. Okay, so I know we learned a lot. There's a lot of information that I'm sure we're processing, learning for the first time, relearning and trying to grasp and understand. And so we don't want to end this educational discussion on just us talking at you, but we actually want to talk, what are our ideas? What are the ways that we can engage our community around this campaign? In our different areas and our different organizations. So folks who are also virtual could be joining us. So there will be breakout groups opening online. And so folks could choose which breakout group, and then the facilitators will kind of integrate the online folks with our in-person. So we will have 3 breakout groups. The first one will be for students or STEM professionals. The second one, workers or, union members, workers' rights advocates. And then the third one will be for those who are concerned around health and our environment. And so some of the objectives that we want to achieve through this breakout is to really just talk about, like, how do we want to bring this information back to our organization? How can we contribute? How can our organizations or communities contribute to the Anduril Out of SoCal campaign? I actually know there are folks online who are coming from beyond SoCal, so folks could also share, what are your experiences? What do you also want to do? 2, how can our Anduril Out of SoCal coalition take up US Out of the Philippines campaign? Like folks were saying, the fight against Anduril goes beyond just Anduril. It's part of the bigger system of US imperialism that is moving out of desperation to maintain its control. And so how can we really also zoom out? The problem is not just in SoCal, it's not just in the Philippines, and how can we really be able to interrelate our work? 3, how can local campaigns coordinate in concrete ways and take up joint action? I know not a lot of folks here in different organizations may not be taking up Anduril Out in the same capacity. So how can we be able to relate these issues to each other and show solidarity with one another? And then lastly, how do we interrelate different issues of the different sectors, communities, so like these different groups, to the issues of militarization? And so we don't want folks to think of these questions as mechanically of just question by question, but use it as a guide to kind of think through what are our own ideas, what are the things that we want to put on the table, what are the things that we want to act on. Let's get back together. really excited to hear what everyone talked about. We want to make sure that our discussions actually culminate in some next steps. So, yeah. I guess folks don't actually need to move. I guess that's not that. It's not, sorry. Okay, cool. So it sounds like there were some really great discussions that folks were having in the breakout groups, and I know there's many more discussions to be had now beyond today. And so want to make sure that we could actually come out of this meeting with some next steps. So next steps that our Anduril Out of SoCal Coalition could help take, our different organizations that are either part of the coalition or want to take up some aspect of this campaign could take up. And so we'll have folks share from the different groups. Please project, or you could come up here and speak in the mic. So maybe can we start with they're figuring out. Can we start with legislative, or sorry, why did I say that? With workers? Yeah.
Yeah, we had a lot of ideas. Some of the ones we talked about were integrating local unions. One, I guess, both inspired by the longshoremen's union action that we put on in the Bay Area right now against CNA Sugar. So we're thinking about reaching out to some local unions from a variety of industries, here in SoCal. Another one we're talking about is mutual aid. For just the everyday person, OC or Long Beach. How can we publicize them?
Talk about this campaign, but also try to address their shortcomings they face, such as like lack of access to food for themselves and their families. Then we also talked about concrete actions such as petition that we could do and canvassing and trying to reach members of the community and workers and, really try to get people interested in devoting time to this campaign.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so just to kind of share back now or kind of reiterate some of the points, like really needing to engage the masses of workers that are part of these different unions all across SoCal that we've seen when they really bring their power as workers together, you could really make genuine change and genuine blows to these industries. So hopefully all of our organizations could build with, make connections with, and really do joint solidarity work with the different unions, whether on campus, in our communities, in the ports. There's so much potential to be done. And then also, right, a lot of the conditions of workers is that they're interested about their economic needs and their economic conditions, right? Maybe we're not going to unite them right away on the political demands of Anduril Out, but how do we actually understand what are their economic issues, what folks were saying, what are their day-to-day issues, and how can we help them actually take action on it? How do we help understand their issues and actually do the work of connecting it to the bigger issue of US imperialism, this war machine, etc. But meet them where they're at, get to know them, build the trust with them to build these genuine relationships and get them on their side, right, of this campaign. And then also really having like a joint petition that could unite our forces all across SoCal, that we could use as a tool to canvass, go door to door, talk to our neighbors, our community members, to understand that Anduril is not just an issue of Long Beach or OC, but it's an issue of the whole world. And so how can we use that as a tool to really organize folks en masse to take up and be in support of this campaign. So thank you, workers group. Can we go to health and environment?
Our group had a lot of good ideas. One of the first ones we thought of was like reach out to environmental groups that we know, like climate groups and OC for climate action, and put all the data we collect in a database and have regular org meetings, systemizing outreach to United Front allies as well. And we also had researching health impacts of this new facility, talk to people about that, engage with healthcare students and healthcare workers, also healthcare orgs on campus, and also finalize the petition and present to local legislator in Long Beach or in Carson and take legislative action training for people as well.
Yes. Yeah, people from Long Beach were sharing about like the already like the actions of the different committees to put together a petition and then present it to like a local legislator. So we talked about engaging like all of our forces in that. And then yeah, we also talked about like researching what are the different impacts of the already existing Anduril facilities that are being built in like Ohio and these other regions that we're in contact with through our alliances, right? So how can we learn of what are already the impacts to see how it might relate to the conditions over here as the new facilities are being built. And then yeah, we also talked about like the Make GKN Pay and like the GKN Out of Garden Grove campaigns that are happening and how interrelated those are. So being able to make joint prop or other ways that we can connect those campaigns together to show like the broader scope and to also connect it back to the environmental impacts locally, but then also in the Philippines and be able to prop about that and also share with people like how we can go to the Philippines too to investigate those environmental and health conditions ourselves. Yes. Anything else that we talked about?
Cool. So, I mean, what we could actually see is that there's already some overlapping ideas, overlapping things that we could really do know. So the use of the petition, the building with different organizations, I think is key. It's right. It's not just unions. There's many environmental organizations, individuals who are concerned about the environment and environmental destruction that we could really build unities with and get them to join this campaign and understand the issues in a broader scope, addressing and doing research on the actual health impacts of communities, I think is major. And I know folks in Ohio especially have really been really exposing that, especially around like things that we talked about earlier is even like nuclear energy's role in AI, you know, and how that also impacts the health of community members. Yeah, and also like really relating it to the different campaigns like GKN now, where you saw already the environmental impacts of more manufacturers like GKN, like how far off is that for things like Anduril and other corporations that are building bases in our communities? So yeah, I think that's and then also really being able to link the impacts of the environmental destruction of what's happening here to the Philippines. We see it all around the world in the global south, like the environmental plunder is so major and also our role to expose that to the broader community. Thanks, y'all. Lastly, can we go to the students in STEM?
Hi everyone, my name is Lucky. I'm part of Anaply in Los Angeles. And something that really stood out in our group that we really talked about was tying back college students and high school students and making sure we're aware of what's going on. One of our Kasamas, she was talking about how she's a middle school tutor. And a lot of these middle schoolers, all they know is that AI helps, but they don't know that AI is involved in the military, it's ties to the military, and it's ties into the extortion of raw resources like places in the Philippines. So for our next test, we talked about things that students, high schoolers, middle schoolers, and college students would all be interested in, things such as cultural action. And we talked about how maybe we could reach out to STEM clubs on campus, such as I know at my high school we have a thing called MESA, Math, Engineering, Science, and Achievement Club. So naturally, there's already people that are interested in AI. However, what we as people who are interested in organizing an AOM, what we must do, we have to educate people about the negative effects of AI and how we can change that. And yeah, additionally, we talked about giving workers, talking to workers as well, because as students, we're the next generation of CEOs, workers, and leaders. So if we educate students and everybody else, then we're gonna be the ones in the world to actually make a change.
Yes, and I think also to add on, we talked a lot about like, specifically in like the Los Angeles region, how like, there are a lot of like, or just like generally in like high school, there's a lot of use of AI. So really bringing, I'm sorry. So really bringing like the Anduril Out of SoCal Coalition, like outreach materials to these schools, right, and to the communities that are really affected. So we specifically identified like areas in LA, even holding like a community meeting, sort of like this one, to invite local students and STEM students to really discuss and like uplift our demands, right, and expose Anduril for like what it's doing. We even link that to like with like the middle schoolers, like them not really being aware, but then using like these discussions to maybe if they aren't already politicized, but making them like realize the connections, right? Let's see. And then also outreaching directly to LBCC students. I know the like the first Anduril Out like community meeting was hosted there in LBCC. So, and we know that the mayor specifically said that there'd be pipelining students from there. So conducting outreach there as well, maybe holding another one of these events to really like expose Anduril like while they're trying to do the recruitment to really combat it. But oh, and then one big thing, linking the Anduril Out campaign to the national SJP campaign against OpenAI and like ending the contracts that they have with OpenAI. We like identified how that's really connected with Anduril. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, so lots of great ideas, no? The conditions of students on all levels are very particular. And so how do we actually maximize those conditions to our advantage to do the education, to really unite them? No, like my own sisters who are in high school like to use AI, but how do we like actually expose like these are the actual impacts of AI in our communities back home and even here locally? And be able to yeah, unite with the different STEM students, these STEM clubs, all the way from like middle school, high school, and college to actually show them like these are the corporations that are essentially grooming them to work for these war manufacturers, these imperialist war manufacturers that are going to the militarization of global South communities. And so also very important to talk to workers, right? Even, you know, the youth are the future of our world, but also the youth it's necessary for the youth to actually go to the workers, understand their struggles, understand their experiences, and also be a force to help unite with them to take up this work in our campaigns. Yes, and then also continuing community meetings, talking to students, really being able to find ways to connect with them, unite with them. I think similar to what we were talking about with the workers, we have to get to know the students, right? We have to get to know their issues, their experiences, to unite with them to take on this work, right? Yes, and then also linking to National SJP's campaign against OpenAI. So yeah, really broadening, right, our view. It's not just Anduril, it's not just these particular war corporations, but it's how are they working with OpenAI? How are they working with Scale AI? How are they working with Raytheon, etc.? All of these war corporations, and how do we actually unite more and more people to be clear, like these are our targets, right? And the more people that we're able to unite, the bigger blows we're able to make. So I think there's really great ideas and next steps that the different breakout groups discussed and really put on the table. And so these are things that we don't want to just leave on this Canva, but actually to bring it back to our community or our communities, our organizations, our alliances, and let's think through how can we put this into action. I also don't want folks to like leave here today not meeting other people, having conversations with other people. A lot of us are part of different organizations, so let's also connect. Let's share our contact information. Let's have meetings with one another to think through how can we actually put some of these things into action. So appreciate folks for the discussion, and I know there's many more discussions to be had. So that is actually the end of today. So we want to ensure that we're not just am I facilitating this for you? I'll facilitate it. I'm sorry. We want to ensure that we have next steps, right? There are all of the things that we talked about, but there's also things that are already happening, right? The Anduril Out of SoCal coalition is growing, and we're getting into the practice of learning how to wield it, learning how to put things into action, and we want folks to be able to join the committees and also use it as a space to share these ideas and help put these ideas into action. So we have prop and media, education and research. We don't have an outreach committee, but we have a legislative committee. And we actually want everyone to contribute and take up the outreach work. So yes, all of us are part of the outreach. If your organization also has not signed on or endorsed the Anduril Out of SoCal Coalition, that is also the link to do so. And we'd love folks to also sign on to show our unity, right? Our unity in thought and action. And then just to share some other things that are happening. I'm actually wondering if there's anyone from LA that wants to share about Bulosan. Anyone here? Okay. Okay, I'll wait for her to come back and then I'll go to the other things. Okay, so maybe we'll come back to Bulosan. Very exciting thing. I'm excited. Stay on your toes. But what's happening on Monday is PSONA, the People's State of the Nation Address. So this is an annual mobilization action that BIA, the National Democratic Alliance, holds in coordination with Kabataan Alliance, Malaya Movement, in support from International League of People Struggle, International Coalition for Human Rights of the Philippines, and we really come together to the Philippine consulate to uplift the demands of the Filipino masses and to confront the Philippine consulate as a representative of the Philippine state. No, the Philippine consulate is not just an office that's supposed to give services. It's actually in direct coordination with the Philippine state. It's responsible for hearing the demands and the issues of the Filipino masses. And what we have seen for many, many years is that the consulate does not actually do anything, right? It actually tries to dispel the mass movement of Filipinos and our allies. And shut down the demands and the needs of the communities that are really trying to meet with them. And so we would love for folks to join. It will be on July 27th on Monday at 6 p.m. And so, you know, Anduril Out is one campaign or one issue. U.S. Is part of U.S. Out of the Philippines. But there are also many other issues that Filipinos are experiencing. The shutdown Pac Silica, there are caregivers who are fighting for the wages, and their employers are still being uplifted, and the Philippine consulate is still uplifting their their facilities to hire more overseas Filipino workers. And there are many other struggles that we're really wanting to unite folks on when we come together for PSONA. So that is one. I see Bing is back. If you want to share about Bulosan, the Bulosan launch on Sunday.
Am I going up there?
If you want, yeah, do it.
Hello, everyone. I'm Bing. I'm with FFPS LA. Just wanted to share about Bulosan. So one of our members a few months ago went on the International Solidarity Affair trip to the Philippines to integrate with KMU and talk about how to strengthen the labor movement globally. when he and the other delegates came back, a group of the exposurists in LA came together to form this Philippine Labor Solidarity Organization, Bulasan, which is named after Carlos Bulasan. He's a Filipino migrant workers organizer who's actually very vital and historical for the farm workers organizing here in California and the solidarity between the Filipino and the Mexican migrant workers movement. So this will be the official launch of Bulasan, meant to tie together the labor movement internationally, bring together workers, develop genuine trade unions here in the States as well as abroad in the Philippines. It'll also be a report back on that international solidarity affair where the ISA exposurists were able to integrate with factory workers, with the urban poor and peasant communities, and also learn about the genuine trade unionism being built in the Philippines. It'll also be a report back of a solidarity delegation that Bulasan led to the Bay a couple weeks ago. Some of us in this room actually went on a trip to Crockett up in the East Bay near Oakland for the CNH sugar strikes. Did y'all talk about that here a little bit? Yeah, so right now, the striking ILWU workers were able to completely shut down the ports up there. That this sugar factory is the one place on the West Coast where sugar comes in. And these workers, along with the community support, along with the international support, other striking workers from Hawaii, from Washington, from SoCal all came together to support this picket because the same sugar that comes in through that port comes from Negros, where the murder of the Negros 19 happened. So they'll be reporting back on this delegation as well as the Solidarity Affair and launching the org and setting their plans on how they're going to continue their work. So we'd love to see y'all there. It's going to be tomorrow in Central LA. What time? 4 p.m. Yeah, at the Unite Here Local 11 Union Hall. Is anybody in here planning on attending? Is anybody interested in learning a little more? Yay, come talk to me after this, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Bean. And then lastly, there will be, if folks haven't heard about the Rim of the Pacific exercises that are happening in Hawaii right now, launching from San Diego. There have been a series of mass mobilizations in San Diego, action taken in Hawaii to really oppose these war exercises that are led by the US, include the Philippines, Israel, and other Pacific Coast countries. That is intensifying, no? It's a collaboration for US-led inter-imperialist war. So we will be coming together again in San Diego sometime between August 6th through August 8th. So be on the lookout. We'll follow up with folks and really hope to see everyone there again. To continue to confront our enemies and to continue to come together in solidarity with our people's struggles. So, I'll pass it to you to share a little bit more.
Just on the significance of the dates for why we're going back
Yeah.
to San Diego. So RIMPAC has been ongoing this year for the past 2 months. That is the date when we're expecting the ships to return back to San Diego. So it's not just sort of the symbolic opposition to RIMPAC, but the exact warships, the materials they're using, all those things that they've been using throughout Hawaii and the Pacific, they'll be returning back to San Diego as well. So That's why it's a little bit shifting exactly what date will be down there, but that's why it's also important that we've been expressing the mass opposition to the impacts of these war exercises, which are really actually war already, right? And this is our joint effort with our friends in Hawaii as well. So.
Thank you, ILPS. Okay, cool. So yeah, again, appreciate everyone here. Actually, combined with the folks that are here online, I believe there's over 70 people that attended this educational discussion. And so many opportunities to continue to advance the work, continue to work together. And so really excited to see what will really come out of this, no? And the many more opportunities we'll have to come together. So thank you again to everyone who joined us either in person or online, and excited to hear about all of the exciting things we'll be up to. Yeah.